everyone. Hello, everyone. Thank you, very kind. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Cynam 21.3. This evening, we're going to be exploring the theme of critical national infrastructure. This is our first hybrid event, so hello to everyone that's joining us at home, and thank you all for joining us here in Cheltenham at the Parabola Arts Centre. It's a bit of a tongue twister. Yeah, I don't know if I've got that right. So, as I said, this is our first hybrid event. We're looking at the theme of critical national infrastructure, and this is a topic that was chosen by our community. So we really hope that the content and the speakers that we pulled together this evening hopefully hit the nail on the head. We've got a jam-packed agenda this evening. I won't go through it, but you'll be able to find it on the broadcast portal if you have a look on your mobile phones. We've got a breakout session. For those of you who are joining us at home virtually, you can join the CGI or the Soprasteria session, and you'll be able to find the details of that online. For those of you that are here this evening, Bristol University are doing a live hacking demo. Please do go and check that out and have a chat to the guys that are doing that because they're really, really interesting. As a community interest company, we would not be able to do these events or any of the other things that we do throughout the year without the support of our sponsors. So a huge thanks to CGI, who are our gold sponsors this evening, to our silver sponsors, Cybrus, who are part of Microfocus, and to our bronze sponsors, Gemba Advantage and Sentience. What did I say?
CACI.
CACI. Did I say that? I hope I did. Yeah, they're fabulous. We love CACI. Sorry, team. No, but it is for us as a community interest company, working with companies that really support the mission and the vision that we're going on is really important. So it's been a pleasure to work with you all. We also wouldn't be able to do all of the other things that we do outside of the event. So if you follow us on Twitter or on social media or you engage with the team, you'll know that we do lots of stuff throughout the year for the community. So our yearly sponsors, we have to give them a big round of applause, please, because they do make everything that we do possible. Thank you. Just a few final little thanks. So the team at Squash Robot have put all of this production together. They will be streaming it live for everyone at home, and then you'll be able to catch up on the content on demand. So a huge thanks to Lex and the team there, and also to Ogadoon, who have helped with the marketing, the pre-coms, and all that sort of stuff. I'm going to go a bit off script, and I want to thank Elle and Claire from Cynam, who have pulled this whole event together. If you're a speaker or a sponsor, you'll have engaged them. They're two fantastic ladies, and they've done a marvellous job bringing this whole event together. Yes, please. They deserve it. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So do follow us on socials. Tell us that you're here. Let us know your feedback. Let us know your favourite sessions. But do get involved with us post the event as well. We really want to know all of the amazing people that we've got in our community locally, and we really hope that we'll be able to work with you moving forward. Reid, I'm going to hand over to you to kick off the first session, but I really do hope you enjoy this evening. Thank you.
So it's my absolute pleasure to introduce Guy Kramer from CyberRes, a line of Microfocus, a silver sponsor, to chair our first panel discussion on CNI and industry perspectives. Guy and the team, come on in. Let's give them a round of applause.
Thanks very much, Reid. So yeah, good evening. This is a talk about keys for the kingdom, UK and cyber resiliency. So on the panel with me this evening, I have Kavas Bakti from EDF, DevSecOps Manager. I have Dr. James Blake, 20 years operational experience as a CISO, including at Mimecast and also Global Head of Cyber Excellence at JP Morgan and Chase, but currently focused on ransomware recovery from Rubrik. I have James Weston from Wessex Water as a cyber security manager. And I have Philip Tonkin, National Grid, Global Head of Cyber Operational Technology. So thanks very much for joining me on the panel this evening, all. So the first question, in terms of IT and OT, what are the intersections between them? Kavas, if you want to start off, please.
Sure. So I'll start by defining OT. There's a NIST definition, which is operational technology. It's a digital system that interacts with the physical world. But as you know, that's a huge range and variety of systems, so it's very hard to treat that as one. If we look at the three jobs I've had at EDF, Firstly, I was looking after the security case for a nuclear power station, where a change needs a year of testing before you roll it out. But on the other hand, we have security controls like men with guns and bomb-proof doors. You then move on to my second job, where I was looking after the security of our smart meters. Those are built to a price point. They have to work for 15 years on a battery, and they're in an environment with openly hostile customers trying to tamper with them to commit fraud. And now I lead a team of people that look after things like all our internet-connected security systems. So I don't think there is one approach to securing operational technology, and you might even hear different definitions about what operational technology is. You have to look at the type of asset, what it's protecting, what risk you can afford to take in it, and then base your approach on that.
So I'm going to refer over to Jimmy. So apologies, it is James, but because there's two James on the panel and I've worked with Jimmy for quite a while, I'm referring to him as Jimmy so I don't get mixed up. So Jimmy, do you have an opinion on this, please?
I do. I mean, obviously I used to work in critical national infrastructure, but the kind that doesn't have wellheads and sluices and things like that. So I worked in the banking sector. And obviously telcos are another part of critical national infrastructure. So I think we need to cast the net fairly wide. So a lot of people obsessively focus on the OT side of things because it's new and it's sexy and it's the kind of thing vendors haven't sold products into before. So there's a lot of attention in that space. But I think, in terms of a resiliency mindset, I think OT and the people that have dealt with it historically have a much better approach than security, where we have a security mindset rather than, as the first session said, where we think about recovery. We still have this moat and wall mentality where we try and protect against everything. And, having worked at a couple of organizations, Saudi Aramco being the classic example, where they'd focused on the OT systems, the oil kept flowing to the wellheads, but no one could charge for it because they had no operational systems. They actually had no telephones because it was a voice over IP system. But they couldn't also ship it because there was no logistics system. So they're 53 kilometer queues back over the UAE border. So there is this relationship between OT and IT is a complete dumpster fire, with this focus on defense rather than this ability to respond and recover, which is, ransomware is going to equally hit hospitals, utilities, and the IT systems that are now connected to OT systems as much as it is any other kind of vertical.
So that's a really interesting point, that the organisation was able to still extract the oil and to create their product, but actually they couldn't then export it and get it out to their network of outlets. Okay, so that's a really interesting point. In terms of risk then, so we've said that originally that we can't actually define one as either IT or OT. It depends on it doesn't necessarily sit within one specific area. It depends on what role it is that they're carrying out. Is there any sort of best practices or things that we can think about in that area that would help push that? Or help progress with that? So I know that MITRE ATT&CK have brought out a new CNI version of their framework. Is there anything else that's coming out in that area that we're aware of? Or actually, James, you were saying about from an IT perspective that it's worth trying to focus on that more because actually the OT environment doesn't have interconnectivity with Ethernet, etc. at the moment, although that's coming.
Yeah, that was actually mentioned in the first session. So some of my thunder was stolen by the first session, and that's where starting to see this move away from purely serially connected systems that use private point-to-point networks for communication to adopting internet technology. So even the OT technology is becoming more IT-like, which is presenting all the same attack surfaces that exist within IT. So I think what we really need to do is merge that mindset thinking, that resiliency thinking of the OT staff, along with the understanding of this much broader attack surface that has always existed within IT, and that needs to be brought together, but alongside these two transformations that are happening at the same time. Digital transformation, which is cloud adoption, remote working, containerization, CI/CD pipelines, and all these ways IT is changing, along with the transformation in the way of adversaries to ransomware, where they can monetize. It's no longer malware used to be a high-frequency, low-impact event. Now the same vectors are used to create a high-impact, high-frequency event, so we need to be able to handle that as a BAU activity. And I think the final thing is this operational transformation, which I think our colleagues could talk about better than I can, but operational technology is changing as well, and there's this massive refresh going on. And I just think we need to work better together as a team. It's difficult enough getting IT and security to work within a bank than to get OT and IT and cloud and all these different security teams to work together.
So coming on to question number 2 then, some of the common issues that are come across in CNI. So James, we were speaking before around some of the process and procedures, etc. Do you want to elaborate a bit more on that for us, please?
Yeah, of course. So I think when we think about the common challenges in CNI organizations and CNI environments, and specifically in the OT area, we tend to think about the technical challenges. So unsupported and unencrypted protocols, legacy software, we have default passwords. But for me at the moment, there's 2 big common challenges which we're seeing becoming bigger and bigger issues. First of those is really the business. We understand where our issues are. We understand where we want to be. We want to be secure. Getting there is a different animal. In terms of we need so many parts, as James alluded to, we have so many components that we need to be working together. We need a common plan. We need to be testing these things. We need to be moving them forward. At the end of the day, the business wants to be secure. That then comes down to be implemented, and we end up with lots of complexity coming back into our environments again. And the second thing for me is awareness. And go from awareness, security awareness in CNI organizations, to actually being behaviorally secure. The difference between the two, so cyber awareness is, I'd say my mum is cyber aware. She understands that she understands what phishing email is. She still clicks on it every time we go through a process of telling her what a phishing email is. We show her what to look out for, and you get a phone call going, I've done it again. Behaviorally secure is understanding what the issue is, understanding what you need to do about it, and it's closing that loop. And what we're not seeing at the moment, or one of the big challenges is we're pushing this awareness. Be aware of cybersecurity, be aware of risk, but we're not helping people get to a point where they can do something about it competently. So almost trying to get us to that health and safety mindset of we know what the issues are, we know how things fail, we know how they break, and this is what you do about it.
In terms of common issues, so Philip, in terms of the changing market, etc., around there, do you want to elaborate on that a bit more for us?
Yeah, really, the changing market, in particular, the push for decarbonisation is really changing how we build and architect systems for the future. If you think about the traditional energy market, there's a lot of, you start off with a source of energy and it is moved in mass and it's slowly disseminated down into the individual consuming areas. So we've been dependent on securing large and independent pieces of infrastructure, power stations, large substations, moving into distribution space and then down into the home. And as we've seen with things like the attacks on the Ukraine, you've got that move between those layers of defense. So things like attacks on the IT space, having a traditional defense there, and then looking at the techniques used to pivot down and then exploit further pieces of infrastructure, have allowed things like the new MITRE attack framework you mentioned and the ICS attack framework to help us classify and understand the different behaviors, how people are attacking things in the IT space, and then once they've got that foothold, how they attack things in the ICS or OT space. But the biggest challenge now, in particular with decarbonisation, is the drive down into the distribution networks, into traditionally untelemetered areas of our energy networks, where every consumer is potentially a generator. Every consumer is a source of balancing of the energy networks, where they may choose to wash their clothes at a different time of the day in order to save money. Which means that instead of having 400 large substations or 100 large power stations to secure, you've now got millions and millions of individual interconnected devices manufactured at a price point which need to be individually secured, which use traditionally untrusted networks, but now carrying out very critical functions. So I think that's a massively emerging trend within the market, in that we have to still secure this large infrastructure, which will continue to be incredibly important, but we've got to run on two tracks. We need to keep securing that large, heavy, critical infrastructure where a single event can have a singly large impact on society. But we mustn't forget that there are a large number of individual items where we have to think very differently, because we haven't got the ability to layer lots and lots of traditional defensive techniques and detection techniques onto those devices. We have to engineer the security into those.
From another utilities area, what would be your take on that?
Yeah, I'd agree with everything that Phil has said. So the move to distributed generation is a massive, massive transformation for the electricity industry. I've got solar panels, right? So I'm part of the solution, but I'm also part of the problem, because Phil's teams have to actually make that work with all of us turning our generation on and off. And going back to the question about common challenges, for me, one of the reasons that we're having more and more common challenges is because of convergence. So if you look at plant control systems, which we talked about before, you would have systems that are operational technology but running on IT kit. And you'll have those systems that are very similar but performing different roles and have to be treated in very different ways. So in our plant control system, we might well have the safety operator's workstation running on a Windows server. And right next to that will be an absolutely physically identical Windows server, but that will be running the plant historian, which bridges the IT and the OT networks. It's used across the corporate network by the engineers, but it's exposed to the threats from the IT network. So even though they're physically the same and running the same operating system, you have to treat them very differently instead of security. And similarly, convergence is affecting IT and OT more and more, because we've talked about plant control systems, and OT are using Ethernet, as you said, where you've got railway interlockings that I've worked on that use Ethernet now. But in the same way, we've also got IT departments that are having to get exposed to IoT devices and smart sensors and smart watches that they can't patch in exactly the same way. So I think more than common challenges, the whole IT, OT security industry is converging on almost being a similar situation, similar teams, similar skills.
Well, I'm afraid we've run out of time there, but thank you very much for everyone on the panel for joining in. I hope everyone enjoyed that conversation. And we became so passionate about this topic, and we've got more to say, so there is going to be a podcast coming out at some point, so keep your eyes peeled for that. But thank you. Thanks, cheers.
It's just amazing, isn't it, the way that the CNI is everywhere, and the complexity is just growing all the time, and the link into climate change as well. I mean, I was hoping we would do an event specifically on climate change, but it's already there, isn't it, with CNI? So thank you, guys. So now we're going to move to our main keynote from our gold sponsor, from CACI. Yes, we've got this thing here in the front row. I would love to introduce you to Nick Barnes. Nick is a senior technical consultant, and he's going to be talking about something called space weather. He's been working with the Met Office to improve the UK's capabilities for space weather monitoring and prediction. I had no idea that space weather was a thing. Nick, come on. Let's give him a round of applause.
My name's Nick Barnes. I work for CACI. I'm here to talk to you about our space weather project and how we've used tech to improve our research to operations capability. Let's get going. So CACI, if you're not too aware of us, we're a professional software and technology consultancy. We work across a wide range of domains, including things like national security and intelligence, defense, law enforcement and borders, and of course, critical national infrastructure. That's where we've worked with the Met Office now really successfully for many years, and the space weather project specifically, we've been delivering for about 7 years. As you mentioned, I expect most of you are probably aware of who the Met Office are, why they're so important. Space weather perhaps less so. So a bit of history there. is that it was added to the UK National Risk Register back in 2011. That was given to the Met Office to own and mitigate, and in response they set up the MOSWOC. So that's the Met Office Space Weather Operations Centre, and that's what you can see a picture of on the screen behind me. So this is one of only 3 continuously manned space weather capabilities in the entire world, the other 2 both in North America. And at CACI, we're responsible for the entire software system to deliver that capability. Sorry. So the capability itself allows people like the one you can see in the picture there to deliver forecasts, alerts, warnings, general situational awareness across a wide range of industry, directly to government. There's a public website and a Twitter feed, so if there's public interest, you can see it there. And also to some partners we've got all around the world, like the European Space Agency. So when I speak about space weather itself and these alerts and warnings, what I'm really referring to are expulsions of matter and energy from the sun, which fly through space and then potentially interact with our planet, an impact on our technology, our infrastructure, and of course that eventually impacts on our lives. One of the really interesting things about space weather is that the more you hear about it, the breadth of these attacks you start to understand. I've got 4 examples up on the screen I'll talk about in a minute, but the potential impact is unbelievably vast, and also the size of them, right? Because space weather events sometimes can affect the entire sunlit side of the Earth at once, so the scale of these things can be absolutely vast. So if we look at my 4 examples there, one of them is aircraft, so we deliver alerts to aircraft all over the world. In response to one of our alerts that a space weather event's ongoing, an aircraft might want to change its flight route, it might want to change its altitude, or even land completely during an extreme event. A more minor event, they might just be interested that the instruments they rely on aren't quite as effective as they always are, and take appropriate action. We've got communication, so my 2 pictures of the ships there represent over-the-horizon communication. This can be hugely degraded by space weather. So in response to our situational awareness, a ship might want to do something like change its communication method, perhaps try on another frequency. And if that doesn't work, that it can just be really important information to know that that degradation in signal, that communication quality, is of natural origin. That can be really important in some situations. Next, we've got my little city graphic, so that's meant to represent us, our energy, our power grid. I suspect a couple of the guys on the previous talk will know more, but we deliver alerts and warnings to energy companies, and in response, they might want to shut off bits of the grid, activate some transformers or circuit breakers to help dissipate the charge induced in our grid by space weather. So a good example here is that in the province of Quebec in Canada a few years ago, a space weather event caused a 9-hour complete blackout across the entire province, so that's a pretty huge impact. Finally, we've got satellites. So of course, the higher up you go, the less protection you get from our atmosphere, which is why planes are badly affected, but satellites are obviously even higher up, so they get almost no protection at all. They also have very sensitive instruments on them, which can be damaged by space weather. So a satellite operator who we deliver alerts and warnings to might want to reorientate their satellite to help protect some of the instruments, or just switch them off entirely. So an example here is GPS. During a space weather event, that can be tens of meters out, it can be hundreds of meters out. And for you or I, heading to work or whatever, I mean, it's a pain, but it's not the end of the world, right? You can imagine maybe if there was a natural disaster, though, and some kind of rescue operation, that information could be absolutely crucial to saving people's lives. So the rest of my time, I want to chat to you about the actual software system we develop. You can largely break it down into 3 areas. So we have a data ingestion bit, we have a processing bit, and then we have a visualization bit. So that's where we take the output of the first 2 steps and we show it to our expert users, hopefully in a useful way. It's that middle stage, the processing one, I want to concentrate on. One of the things we do there is run very complex scientific models. And what my graphic there is meant to represent, these models, they're not all developed in-house at the Met Office. They're developed by academics and researchers and organizations all over the world. And then one of our jobs at CACI is to get them running operationally in our space weather system, so that's the bit in the middle. Now that word operational has quite different meanings. When the coding is complete on these models, it's considered operational by the people who developed it. Like you feed the right data in, it chugs away for a bit, you get some hopefully useful output out, which is scientifically valid. It's operational. But for us and the Met Office, and probably a lot of your organizations, when we think about operational software, we think about things like, does it have security embedded in it? Does it have, is it receiving its data from a known good and safe source? Is it integrated with our support team? So if something goes wrong at 2 in the morning, I'm definitely not going to be getting that call. We need a support team who can see what's happened, know how to diagnose it, know how to fix it, or maybe even the thing can fix itself. That is the research to operations process. So it's us bolting all these services on after the fact, once we've been sent this model, and sometimes it can literally be a zip containing hundreds of thousands of lines of code. We have to bolt all this stuff on. Then we have to find somewhere to run it. Some of them could take a couple of minutes on your laptop at home. They're pretty simple. Some take hours on the Met Office supercomputer, so there's a big infrastructure concern there as well. Real problem is, once we've done all this and changed the model, got it somewhere to run so it can deliver value to our forecasters and help keep us safe, the poor scientists and academics then have to validate the whole thing all over again because of the changes that have been made. So to try and help this problem, a couple of years ago, in a rare moment of clarity, our government decided to put up about £20 million of space weather funding. So the majority of this went out to organizations to develop new space weather models, but some of it came to us at CACI, and we've been working closely with the Met Office since to develop a research to operations infrastructure. So that's some kind of platform to ease this process of getting these models into operations. And when we approached this problem, we did a discovery first, and we really wanted to understand how the developers make these things. We were very clear we didn't want to steam in and sort of say, what have you heard about Agile, and just read this awesome Spotify blog I found, and if you could just completely change the way you work in a couple of months, that would be brilliant. It's normally not a great route to go down. These are very intelligent people who've been working successfully for a long time. So we wanted to use tech to kind of silently improve this process and let them go about their day jobs in the way they always have. So we broke the development process down into 4 stages. There's a create stage, so that's where they're doing their coding. There's a build stage, so we turn that code into an artifact, something we can run. There's a deploy stage, so we find somewhere for it to run. And then a verify stage. Is it producing valid scientific output? Is that valuable, etc. What we did is, part of the discovery, we realized that these academics, these organizations, they're experts at creating the models and verifying them. CACI, we're very good at developing software and deploying software into the cloud. So we used our technology to enable this process, and we took care of the build and deploy steps you can see up there, and let the model developers concentrate on what they're good at. That's creating the things and verifying the output. I do have some AWS pictures up there. You might be relieved to know I don't have time to go through them all, but I can. They're very interesting, honestly. I can talk you through the process for these academics now as they're using the system. So what they do is they code their models at home, at their institutions, whatever they want, as they always have done. That came out of Discovery. It was really important. That's how they wanted to work. So they code their models at home. They push their code up to cloud source control. That triggers our build pipeline, which we've developed, so they don't really know that much about it, but it's a malleable pipeline in the public cloud, and it takes their code, and it takes a bit of config, and puts them together, and turns that model into a Docker image, which is like a small virtual machine, if you haven't come across Docker before. Every organization using this system gets its own private Docker registry. Again, from the discovery, they like to download and they like to run their models on their local laptops, so they're still able to do that if it's appropriate. But crucially for us and the Met Office, that build stage finishing triggers the deployment stage. That creates an exact replica of the Met Office operational system in the cloud. It's private to every organization who runs it, and that, from us, has things like the security built in from the start. There's an API there, which is serving them the data their model needs from sources we've vetted to be clean and good and safe. There's the integration I mentioned with the support teams from day one, which they can use. There's all these different things. There's a scheduler in there, so it runs on time, every time when we need it to, et cetera, et cetera. I won't go through them all, but it's there. Remember, all the developers had to do is push up a single commit, and a few minutes later, they have a replica of our operational infrastructure running their model. The verify stage, we help them out with as well. So some of these models can chuck out hundreds of gigabytes, terabytes of information. Sharing that with people is obviously a challenge. So we have cloud storage there. There's an API sat on the front. They can hit the API, get a link back, which has some security embedded in it, credentials, and then share that with whoever needs to come back and verify the model. When it finally comes time to put this thing into operations, we simply point that deploy stage at our operational account in the cloud rather than this development one, and it's away, it's in operations, it's providing output to the forecasters and helping to keep us all safe. That's pretty much the end. You'll see I'm not hugely into social media, but my email address is there. If you're interested in space weather, that is Space Weather the Thing, Space Weather the project, or just how it might affect your organizations, please do send me an email. I'm very friendly. Or just come and chat with me in the bar afterwards. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Nick. Good to see you. Just stay around, yeah. I mean, if we wanted to actually see some of this online, is there anywhere we could go online?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so there's the Met Office public website. If you Google Met Office Space Weather, you'll get to our public website. It's got the output of some models. We've got one on there which forecasts the northern lights, actually, which we're probably all familiar with, so that's quite interesting. Some cool pictures of the sun, and then there's a Twitter feed and other bits and pieces like that.
Cool. Yeah. Oh, thank you. That was really interesting. So now it's time for a break. Yeah, another clap. Thank you. And a bow. Fantastic. So, time for a break. You've worked hard listening to that, taking it all in. For virtual attendees at home, please click the breakout session option on the event portal at the top right of the page and choose one of the two breakout options. For our physical audience, please make your way over to the bar and get networking. And don't forget, University of Bristol has some incredible CNI hacking demos. They are only demos, so we're not going to be hacking the actual CNI today, but really good. And I think they've got some doctoral training places left, so do sign up there. See you all in 30 minutes for the second half. Thank you. Welcome back, everybody. Really good to see you. I hope you had a really great break and you managed to charge your glasses. Those of you here, did you see the Bristol University CNI demo? Hope that was good. For those of you virtually, I hope you had a great breakout session too. So we're now into the second half, and we've got some really great stuff coming up. We are going to be doing all sorts of stuff. We've got another panel session. We've got a student showcase. And we'll be updating you with what's happening in Cheltenham and Gloucestershire in our ecosystem. So, but before we do that, I'd like to kick off part 2 with a fireside chat. And we're going to be looking at how we maintain essential services back to CNI. And I'm delighted to welcome Professor Alan Cook from the University of Montfort. If I can get that right. That's right, de Montfort. He's a visiting professor there, and he's also director of cyber risk at Deloitte. Come on down, Alan. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming. So Alan has loads of experience in CNI. I won't say how many years you've been working on it, but loads of great experience. And maybe to just kick things off, for organizations thinking about planning for business continuity and resilience in the face of CNI, what would you say are the top things that they really need to be thinking about?
Sure, it's a really good question. I think when you think about business continuity and disaster recovery, to a certain extent, it's an established process. It's an established discipline. But what do you do when you're trying to incorporate willful acts through the cyber domain in this environment? So if you think about BC and TR, we have a number of scenarios that we think about, and we plan accordingly. The research that we're doing is, if there is a set of scenarios that you've thought about, there must be a set that you haven't thought about. And in that set, there is an adversarial component of people, as I've said, willfully trying to degrade or to damage services. So what does that look like? You can think about the processes and the services that a CNI operator has to has to maintain. And you can think about the systems that underpin that, and you can start to apply security protections against those. But Paul hit the nail on the head when he opened up this session and started to talk about those supporting services. Charging was the example that he gave. What happens when you lose charging? Can you still supply that service? You know, if you lose heating, cooling, lubrication, will that service still work in the way that you've intended, even in that fallback scenario of a disaster recovery scenario? So we're working on ways and means to think about that and to introduce that adversarial mindset. Then we take it a stage further, and the research is then starting to tease out. Then, once you've thought about that and you've thought about what those circumstances might look like, how would they manifest themselves on your network or on your systems? It's very simple, and a lot of us have done this in the past. There's a bunch of systems there and a process, and you say, well, they'll kind of enter there, and they'll move across there, and they'll reach that point, and they'll do the bad stuff. But when you're looking at that through the worlds of logs and sensors, it's a very different problem. And would you recognize that behavior? Would you even know to look for it? So a lot of the challenges that we're working on at Montfort and within Deloitte are looking at how these wider scenarios would look on your sensors and logs, and what can you do to be a step ahead so that the first time you experience that is not the first time it
So if you're
happens.
a SOC analyst, and you're presented with all this sort of data, how do you know that it's
Exactly
CNI?
right. Is this normal behavior? Is this the different behavior? Now, for the SOC, you establish your pattern of life and everything that goes with that. Very simple. But when you start to try to incorporate the OT side of things, you can't always put endpoints there. The technology won't support it. If you're working in deterministic systems, you can't introduce the randomness of the latency that it might introduce. So you know that there are components of your network that you can't see in your SOC. So how would you compensate for that? How would you look for the precursor actions or the actions that happened after the event to tell you that has occurred? So we've got a research SOC that Montfort and Deloitte jointly built exactly for this, where we start to experiment with the behaviors of certain threat actors and how they would look, so you can start to shape how you would look for that.
And in terms of what sort of assets would an analyst have? Would you have sort of playbooks, or what sort of things would you be able to use?
Playbooks are an interesting point, and we've been working with the NCSC at De Montfort on this. So playbooks lend themselves to a static problem set. So we talked about the scenarios that you think might happen, and you write a playbook against that. There's evidence that playbooks only get you so far because you have to adapt to the changing environment, the changing state of your networks, the nature of the adversary and what they can do very quickly. So we've started to adopt some techniques from the agile world to allow us to have a set of outcomes, and I'll talk about those subsequently, but you'll have a set of outcomes you're trying to achieve and a set of ways of working to allow you to move towards that end state in the most appropriate way to get there. So if you think about the use of a backlog and Kanban boards, things that we're using more and more in the engineering world, they allow us to adapt as long as we've got that North Star at the end of this of this service needs to be back at this level of capability.
I did not think we'd be talking about Agile and Kanban in CNI.
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere, yeah. I mean, could we go back a little bit and just maybe talk a bit about what are the main causes of CNI that in your experience?
Well, the main challenges that we face, and I think it was James on the panel session who brought it up, is the breadth of the disciplines that you need to bring together. There's the IT side, there's the OT, there's the management, there's the operations, there's the finance, a whole range. And challenges come when you try and bring together people who think differently, or who've got different priorities, or have a priority focused on one particular component of what you're trying to achieve. So what we found through experimentation is that there are 5 mental models that incident response teams need to have in the heads of everybody that's involved. And that allows them to have a common framework to talk to each other, a language, a lexicon, a common set of the priorities you're trying to reach, but what they mean for you, but how you can explain to someone who's not in your area of expertise the consequences of what is going on. Some of these mental models are relatively static and don't change that much. Some change very quickly during an incident. And you don't want to be developing these on the fly. So going back to some of the challenges that we see in CNI. Firstly, the first time you run through your response processes shouldn't be the first time that you're having a major cyber incident. Because the best way to learn is through failure. But you don't want to fail when you're going through your first live incident response. So we've been working on techniques to progressively introduce more and more complex and more stressful incident response situations that are geared to building these 5 mental models in the minds of everybody that's going to be involved in a future incident, linking those back to that preemptive understanding of the adversarial picture. So we're not only thinking about what are we seeing on the network, but it allows us to think about what will happen next. If you think about the MITRE attack framework, it's very good not only at codifying the behaviors, but it gives us a structure that lets us think about the actions that we might see next. Because if all we ever do is respond to what we see, we're only ever catching up. And they may be way past that point. We just haven't seen it. So we talk about this progressive development, progressive rehearsal of the capability. We start off just using very tabletop approaches where we start to just tease out the processes and the language and get people to talk about the information that they need and that other people can potentially supply them. Then start to move that to small-scale technical infrastructures where we start to introduce the IT and the OT. Then introduce digital twins, cyber ranges, these more and more complex environments that allow us to have more complexity to put the team under greater and greater stress up to the point that when this happens for real, they firstly have experienced it, secondly, they've got the mental models and the ways of working to communicate effectively, and thirdly, the stress is something that they're confident with.
I wish we had more time to talk about this. No, this is great. This is fascinating. And if people want to know more about your research, they can just Google it on the web.
Absolutely. If people want to speak to me about it, best way is to get me on LinkedIn or something like that, and I can point you at it all.
Brilliant. Thank you, Alan. Please give Alan a round of applause. Thank you so much. Lovely to see you. And now, please allow me to reset the scene a little bit. We're going to move away from CNI for the moment and focused a little bit more intimately on Cheltenham. So as you know, there's lots of exciting things happening in our region, and here to tell you about them, first of all, is NCSC for Startups. We have Rob Carney, I should say, get that right, from Plexal, who's going to introduce you to some brand new founders, and is going to take us on the journey with them. This is the first intake of the new NCSC for Startups program. Over to you, Rob.
Ollie Lewis, I'm the co-founder of Rebellion Defense.
My name is Vivienne Dufour, I'm CEO of Meterian.
My name is Mark, and I'm the CTO at Enclave Networks.
My name is George Brown, and I'm the founder and the CEO at Porgiesoft.
I'm Ryan Hartfield. I'm one of the co-founders of Exalens.
And we're explicitly focused on that problem of cyber readiness. So how you can bring machine capabilities to problems that typically would be tackled by a human in the past. So red teaming that may happen every 3 to 6 months, we're interested in making a machine do that in near real time.
Meterian de-risks the open source plumbing of software applications that we've come to rely on as we move and communicate and work freely in our digital society. Developers can use our SaaS continuous security platform so organizations gain a proactive and preventative line of defense.
Enclave creates invisible access gates for your apps, your servers and your infrastructure, rendering them dark to the public internet. Those invisible access gates only materialize when certain trust standards and policy are met, which makes your organization extremely difficult to discover, to target and to attack.
So Porgiesoft was previously an edtech startup, but since the pandemic, we decided to pivot into cybersecurity, and we're trying to use machine learning and natural language processing to detect cyber fraud in emails and text messages.
So Exalens are effectively building an automated threat detection and incident response platform that we like to describe as a digital security companion. That effectively gives organizations a virtual security analyst for identifying threats and responding to them when they occur in their organizations.
So hi everyone, my name's Rob Carney. I'm leading the work that Plexal's doing here in Cheltenham with the NCSC. You may remember if you came to Cynam 21.2 that Saj Huck was on stage with Chris Ensor announcing the start of the NCSC for Startups program. And I'm delighted to be joined now by 4 out of the 5 companies that have been with us on that program for the last almost 12 weeks. We've already seen their introductions on the video, so I'm going to go straight into questions. And the first one to Ryan, CTO of Exalens. Exalens started off as a research-focused SME, looking at Industry 4.0, then pivoted into developing its own product. Yeah. So how has the program helped you make that change?
Thanks for the question, Rob. Yeah, so Exalens started as a research SME, focusing on bridging cybersecurity, instant detection, and physical disruption detection in emerging industries like CNI or digital manufacturing. So having this technology and deciding as a company to build a product, naturally as a company, we focused on the tech. Our expertise was in innovation and research and building their technology kind of from the bottom up. What that practically meant is that we didn't have necessarily the skills from building a business. So what the NCSC programs really allowed us to do is kind of use all the resources in the consortium and network as a catalyst of building that wrapper for us as a business, gaining access to talking to industry experts, gaining access to understanding how do we to turn our technology, which is innovative and disruptive, into product market fit, and understand how to market that, and how to demonstrate impact to, let's say, the industry in a way that is not relying on our bias in terms of how well the technology works, but how much value it gives to the industry. And the consortium and with the NCSC and Plexal and the access to those resources has really helped us build the business.
Great, thank you. And I know you're super keen to speak to some of the CNI people in the audience. I'm going to go next to Vivienne from Meterian. So we've known each other a little while. So how has the program helped Meterian secure open source software? How's it helped on your journey?
Yeah, well, thanks to you, Rob, for reaching out this past summer about the vulnerability research focus in the NCSC for Startups program. So as we met a few years back, about 3 years ago, we were in the Cylon Cyber Accelerator program. The difference is when we started, we had an MVP supporting just 2 languages, analyzing open source software to identify any security risks, licensing risks. We've moved on over the last few years, and just before coming into the program, we've expanded to 12 languages. Now we're up to 15 languages covering old and new, and we've actually won quite a few enterprise customers. And what's been really exciting in this program is that we've opened more doors to even larger enterprises, and we're seeing that there's still the hiccups of between development operations and security to identify how we can smooth out bringing security into the day-to-day workflow of developers. And it can be done very easily and quickly. It's just that day-to-day, everyone has very different priorities and competing priorities. So we're seeing that we can actually help with our service. And that's been really exciting to be at the crossroads of industry, government, and academia to really cross-pollinate the ideas, even along with fellow entrepreneurs in the cohort have also given us feedback on our product. And we're looking forward to helping enterprises as well as eventually any size enterprise to secure that open source software supply chain that we all depend on every day.
Thank you, Vivian. I'll come to George next. So like the earliest stage company on the program in Porgiesoft. And your entrepreneurial journey is really interesting, starting off in EdTech before pivoting into trying to combat fraud using machine learning. So I'd love to hear and share more about your experience on the program and how it's helped with that pivot.
Yeah, the program has really helped us. So as you said, we're quite like early stage and we're working in EdTech, and what we're doing was we're trying to label data and trying to detect when a student had been bullied at school. We're trying to use machine learning to predict that. But then what we found like during the pandemic was there was a rise in cyber fraud. And this moment came where we thought, could we actually apply the same techniques that we were using in natural language processing to solve the same problem, but now in cyber fraud? And the answer was yes. So we decided to build a new product. We're focusing on enterprises, and then we applied and we joined the program. So originally when we came into the program, we were focusing on phishing specifically, but the program has really helped us to find a better product market fit. Also, there are like blind spots we had not really thought about before. So really adding in other sources of threat intelligence, really trying to like perfect what we're doing. And I think being an EdTech startup as well, sometimes you're not aware of the responsibility that comes with cybersecurity. But this is really, the program has helped us to really find like a network and also be part of the cyber ecosystem, which has been really helpful in like validating our technology. So it's been great.
Thank you, George. So from the earliest company to then Rebellion Defense, Ollie, thanks for joining us. Successfully completed your Series B recently. So for maybe someone like Rebellion, well-funded organization, what was the draw of the program for you?
Thanks, Rob. It's, I think firstly, I've only ever seen these mics in a musical like Hamilton, so I kind of think I should bring in some fully armed battalions to remind you of my love. But I think there's a lot of love for this program because of 2 things. I mean, the first one being that startups tend to fail if they assume investment means you need to stop listening and learning. And the level of exposure we've had, particularly to technical architects in NCSC, has meant that we've learned about certain product features which are going to be absolutely critical to deploying our software on critical national infrastructure. So just having to think about safety-based accreditation rather than security-based is not something we'd be considering, and now we will, and that's been a brilliant asset. I think the second one being that in our sector, defense and intelligence, access to users is the critical dimension and the highest barrier to entry. And it's just been extraordinary to have NCSC make that readily available across these 12 weeks. And that you could not buy that. So from our perspective, this is a program that money couldn't buy.
Okay, thank you. So before I come to, I guess, my last question to all of you, I just want to mention we have 4 out of the 5 companies joining us here on stage. We also have Enclave Networks, who are looking at sort of zero trust network access. They're unable to join us today. They're working extremely hard closing their next funding round. So you can see a picture of Mark up there. If you want to speak to them, please let me know and I can arrange an introduction. I'm sure they'd love to speak to all of you here. Another thing to mention is these companies have been with us for, almost the full 12 weeks of the program. We're due to have another group, hopefully 5 at least, starting in mid-November. And we also have live on the NCSC for Startups a challenge around malvertising. So if you are a company or know a company that's interested in combating malvertising, please give it a Google. And we'd love to hear and see your application. So in the last few minutes, I'm going to ask then, given those companies who are maybe thinking of applying or joining us in mid-November, what one piece of advice would you give them? And I'm going to have to say succinct advice, but what one piece of advice would you give them? I'm looking at you, Ryan. Yeah.
As a startup, you're going to come to the party with skills and capability, but you're going to lack it as well. So don't be scared to feel like you're not the finished product, because you're not the finished product. Programs like this allow you to build and mature.
George, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I'd say just go for it. Even if you're in another sector, there's always ways to apply what you've done and really move it over into cyber.
For me, it would be to focus on execution, getting most out of the program. Really walk away from each session and say, well, what can I get out of this? And what am I going to do next? What shared idea can I have with that person I just met, whether it's a mentor, company, or any government official? There's always a way to find a shared path to achieve the common mission.
I think that everything in a startup feels like it's busy and is a higher priority. And I would say that prioritize this, and wherever you are in the country, prioritize coming to Cheltenham and immersing yourself in that community, because it is absolutely invaluable.
Okay, thank you, everyone. So we're almost out of time. I know we can continue to follow your journeys using social media. The chap who did the space weather thing, he should get on it so he can follow these companies. And it leaves me to say, I guess, 2 things. Thank you for joining me on stage, but also thank you for really joining us over the last 12 weeks. It's been a pleasure having you all work together.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Wasn't that inspirational? I mean, such talent, diversity, passion. This is where the value gets created. I hope you're inspired like I am. What a privilege to have these folks here in Cheltenham. And anything we can do to support you in your growth journeys, do let us know. Do check them out on the socials to be part of their journey, and get in touch with them. They really want to grow and to serve their customers. And now we're going to have another update on where we are with Gloucestershire. I'm going to welcome Rich and Madeline onto the stage. It's Rich York, who's our MD.
Good evening, everyone.
You've met Madeline. Actually, I don't think Madeline introduced herself. Madeline Howard, Chair of Cynam. CACI, gold sponsor. Awesome. So, what's happening?
Well, I'll go first, really, because there's a lot happening, actually, within Gloucestershire. But before I talk about that, just let me give you an update about something that's happening on our doorstep down in Swindon and Wiltshire. So the LEP there has secured government funding to start a business cyber centre in Chippenham, working in partnership with the University of Bath, Defense Digital, and other partners. And that's going live in spring. So watch out for that. A bit closer to home now within Gloucester itself, you may have heard of the development that's happening in King's Place there. Very exciting thing being led by Reef Digital. It's called the Forum, and within that there's going to be an innovation centre focused on the digital sector called the Forge. So yeah, do check out their website. That won't go live until 2023, but they're going to be starting to engage the digital, creative and cyber sectors. So do look out for those guys. If you want to know more on that, it's forumdigital.co.uk. And then obviously in Cheltenham itself, so our friends and partners at Hub 8 been doing a fantastic job, obviously, with the facility in the brewery quarter. And as you'll be aware, from September, they went live with their new facility at Gloucester College on the Cheltenham campus, right next door to the Donut. I believe that's already full in terms of companies in there doing some amazing work. So the thing to also note then is what's coming in spring next year is the Minster Innovation Exchange. This is a purpose-built innovation centre right in the centre of town. If you don't know where the Minster is, it is a bit tucked away, but it's by the library, stone's throw from where we are today and Hub 8. Do check that out over the next few weeks, going into November and December. You'll start to see the big sort of modular purpose-built items being delivered into the town centre, and as I say, that's going live in spring. I think you all know who Bruce Gregory is. In fact, that's him up there. He was meant to be here today, but unfortunately he's not feeling too great. So when he's back on his feet, do speak to Bruce if you want to know more about the Minster Innovation Exchange. I think all of these initiatives have been funded or backed up with government funding, and I think that's something that's really important to note, because that's showing that they're recognising the value this region is bringing in terms of the cyber sector and all the work that's being done to help keep the UK safe and secure within this region, but then also recognising the economic growth that's helping to contribute to as well. So it's really, really fantastic to see those developments happening and it getting the support. Just before I hand over to Madeline for some more news, talking of government support, so we have through the DCMS and the UK C3 secured some funding. This is Cynam now to deliver a project starting next month about engaging the investment community and bringing them into Cheltenham and Gloucestershire. And there's two aspects to that. The first is going out and actually talking to SMEs and startups within the region to understand what their investment requirements are, what experience they've perhaps had in the past in terms of trying to raise finance, what their ambitions may be in the future. So if you are a small business or startup considering funding or have had funding and investment in the past, we really want to speak to you so that we can understand that picture and then start to talk to investors and bring the two together. So that's exciting. That's kicking off in November. Get in touch with me if you're interested in that. So that was everything I wanted to update you on. I'll hand over to Madeline. Thank you.
So I just wanted to give an update on Cynam itself. So at 21.2, we announced that we were getting an extra half a person to join the team. We have now taken on Elle Hardman full-time, so we're now a team of 3 because we've also had the wonderful Charlotte Smith. Charlotte, if you want to stick your hand in there, join the team, who has joined as our Cyber Skills and Growth Coordinator. Now, this role has been part funded by Capita and also the Gloucestershire LEP. And this is a really brand new role, hasn't been done before, and we're really hoping that between Charlotte and our partnership with the LEP, we're going to help to really drive some engagement between industry, schools, academia and government to help really funnel that talent pipeline. Many of you will have joined us last week at the Cheltenham meetup at the Brewery Quarter. Some of you might have sore heads the next day. I definitely did. But we are going to be working more closely with Factory, who are the development partners for Golden Valley.
And HBD.
And HBD on some more, I can't miss anyone else out, on some more meetup events like that. I know that it wasn't just a great opportunity to drink loads of beer, but actually some really great connections and conversations were had. We also met with Michael Gove last week at Gloucestershire College, and I well and truly believe that he actually was really excited about what is happening here. We briefed him on Golden Valley, on Cynam, on what's happening and how wonderful this community is, and he really was very receptive about where we're going and actually understood that what's happened here in Cheltenham and Gloucestershire has been driven by a community that's really excited about where it wants to go. Reid, do you want to do a bit on
Well,
Golden
I mean,
Valley?
our local MP, Alex Chalk, sends his apologies. He would love to have been here, but now that he is the Solicitor General, he's quite busy and he's off to Parliament. But he's been a great supporter for us, as have all the local politicians. No, I think there's nothing more to say really from me. Really, I mean, great stuff going on. So great to be part of this ecosystem for Team UK. I mean, I think really what we need to do, because as we move on towards the end, we really need to focus on the next generation. So we're going to look now at what is happening with that generation of talent, the next generation, and we're going to hear from some of our students in Gloucester about their desired career paths. And if you in the audience at home or here have any opportunities in your business to make an exciting future for a hopeful young person, please would you contact us at Cynam and we can facilitate. I mean, this is where leveling up really starts. And the next generation, we need to get on with this now because the country really needs this type of skills. So, over to our students. Thanks, folks.
Hey everyone, I'd like to use these 30 seconds to quickly introduce myself. I'm currently studying my Level 3 Forensic Cybersecurity course at Gloucestershire College. I want to use these 30 seconds to show you guys that I'm passionate and I'm looking for software and cyber work experience. I want to use this work experience to strengthen my knowledge and develop my skills. A 2-day week placement will be perfect for me as it will give me the time to study at college and give myself some spare time to do the things I love. I don't have much experience in software or cybersecurity, but I have self-taught myself C#, only using websites such as W3 Schools and challenge websites so I could apply my knowledge on C#. I would appreciate any opportunities anyone can provide. I hope you take me into consideration and thank you for your time.
My name is Kofi Wilkins. I go to Gloucestershire College and I study Forensic and Cybersecurity Level 3. I am interested in penetration testing. I've always had, in ethical hacking, always have since I was a kid. And I'm looking for day placements, apprenticeships, jobs in the field, anything to get, I really want to get the experience and learn more and grow. And I'd just like to thank Cynam for giving me an opportunity to participate in this event.
And there are many more students like that. So please do consider giving them an opportunity. Madeline, do you want to come back on the stage? And we will wrap up. So who do we have to thank? Have we got anybody left to thank?
Gold sponsors, CACI. Thank you. No, we really obviously want to thank the gold sponsor, CACI, but also our other sponsors, so Cyberus and Microfocus, Gemba Advantage, and also Sentience. As I said, all of this does not happen without your support. To Elle, Claire, and all of the stewards. The stewards do not work for the venue. They are lovely people in our community who have stuck their hand in the air and said that they would boss you around and stick stickers on you and tell you where to sit. So if we could give a round of applause to everyone that's made this evening possible. And also, Mr. Reed Derby, we will have a bronze statue of you at Golden Valley when it's built, as I keep telling you.
I'll look forward to that, yes. Thank you so much for coming. Get onto the socials, tell people about what we're doing, and get involved, and look out for the next things that we'll be doing, next events. Thank you very much.
Fabulous. Get home safe.